The time was 1:30 a.m. Air Transat Flight 236 was flying through pitch darkness above the Atlantic Ocean, en route from Toronto to Lisbon. More than 4 hours had passed since takeoff, and everything on board had been running smoothly, until suddenly a chilling warning appeared in the cockpit. It was the kind of alert that could make anyone's skin crawl. The warning indicated that the aircraft was running out of fuel while cruising at 39,000 feet in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The pilots were stunned. There was no land in sight in any direction, just open ocean below. At that point, there seemed to be only one option: prepare for a crash landing into the sea with all 293 passengers on board. A horrifying and almost certain fate. But then something truly unexpected began to unfold. What exactly happened 39,000 feet in the air, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean? That's what we'll uncover in today's incredible story. Let's not wait any longer and dive into this fascinating incident. Our story begins at Toronto Pearson International Airport, Canada, on August 23, 2001, at 8:52 p.m. local time. Air Transat Flight 236, an Airbus A330, took off for Lisbon, Portugal. It was a non-stop flight scheduled to last 7 hours, carrying 293 passengers, 2 pilots, and 13 crew members. Before takeoff, the aircraft was fueled with approximately 46.9 metric tons of fuel, about 4.5 tons more than necessary. At the controls were 48-year-old Captain Robert Peach, who had over 16,800 flight hours, 796 of them on the A330, and 28-year-old First Officer Dirk de Jager, with 4,800 total hours, 386 on the A330. Both were highly experienced. Shortly after takeoff at 8:52 p.m., the plane reached its cruising altitude of 39 feet. The plan was simple: fly straight across the Atlantic and land in Lisbon. As night fell, most passengers fell asleep, and there wasn't much left for the crew to do. 4 hours passed uneventfully as the plane flew over the vast ocean. Then, at 1:03 a.m., Captain Peach noticed an unusual reading in the cockpit. Moments later, an error appeared: high oil pressure, low oil quantity, and low oil temperature. Now, such small glitches can occasionally happen on long-haul flights, and pilots typically fix them mid-air without much concern. But this error wasn't normal. Neither pilot had seen this in their entire careers. Confused, they consulted the flight manual, only to find no information on the error. Ignoring it wasn't an option. No pilot would risk 293 lives in the middle of the ocean. So Captain Peach contacted Air Transat's Maintenance Control Center. Shockingly, even the maintenance team was unfamiliar with the error. Still, they advised the pilots to monitor it closely while they investigated. Time passed, and the pilots began to relax, assuming it was a faulty sensor. But just 30 minutes later, at 1:36 a.m., another warning appeared: fuel imbalance. Normally, fuel is evenly distributed between the plane's 2 wings, but slight imbalances can occur. This too seemed manageable. The pilots initiated a fuel transfer from the left wing to the right, correcting the imbalance. But unknowingly, this action would trigger a much bigger problem. Soon after the transfer, engine no. 2 began showing a drop in oil temperature and a rise in oil pressure. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the pilots began looking for the. They contacted air traffic control and quickly received permission to land. But by now, the fuel was depleting rapidly, 1 gallon per second. They had only 7 tons of fuel left, just enough for about 30 minutes of flight. Yet Lodges was still 280 kilometers away. Still, the pilots refused to give up. But things took a terrifying turn at 2:13 a.m. when engine no. 2 caught fire. Now only one engine remained operational, and it, too, was running low on fuel. Captain Peach lowered the plane from 39,000 to 33,000 feet to conserve what little fuel remained. They suspected a fuel leak, but in the pitch-black night, they couldn't confirm it visually. Maintenance advised descending further to 20,000 feet to detect a leak, but the pilots refused. If they couldn't climb back, they might be forced to ditch the plane in the sea, a death sentence. Instead, they held steady at 33,000 feet, hoping they could make it to Lajes. Air traffic control had cleared the runway. As the plane approached Lajes, disaster struck again. Engine No. 1 also caught fire. Now both engines were dead. The plane lost all electrical power. Panic spread among the passengers. But thanks to a device called the Ram Air Turbine Rat, the cockpit still had minimal power for essential systems. The plane, now at 30,000 feet, began to glide. Here's the physics. The Airbus A330 has a glide ratio of 15, one meaning for every 15 feet forward, it descends 1 foot. At that ratio, the 121 kilometers left to Lajes could be covered. But now came another problem. At just 15 kilometers away, the plane was still at 20,000 feet, far too high to land safely. So air traffic control advised the pilots to make a 360-degree turn. Captain Peach complied, bringing the aircraft down to 5,000 feet. Still too high. He performed several S-turns, reducing altitude further. Finally, at 2,000 feet, the aircraft was at a safe altitude for landing. As the plane touched down on the runway at Lajes, 8 of its 12 landing gear tires locked up, and the speed was over 370 km/h. The impact caused a massive bounce. The aircraft sped down the runway for nearly 2,300 meters before finally coming to a stop. Most of the tires had burst. Due to chaos inside the cabin, 14 passengers and 2 crew members sustained minor injuries. But miraculously, there were no fatalities. Later investigations revealed that a faulty hydraulic part had been installed before takeoff, causing a fuel leak mid-flight. This led to both engines failing. As a result, Air Transat was fined $250,000 Canadian dollars, and Airbus introduced new safety modifications across its fleet. Flight 236 made history by gliding over 121 kilometers without engine power, the longest such glide ever. It earned the nickname the Azores Glider. So friends, that was today's incredible story. Let us know in the comments how you liked the video. If you found it interesting, be sure to give it a like. And for more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.